The spotlight cuts through the ballroom darkness, and I watch Camden's face drain of color as my name appears in gold letters on the screen behind me. 24 hours ago, she was laughing at my pathetic little event planning job for her 3 million followers. Now she's realizing that the woman she humiliated online is the same woman who just wrote the check that made her influencer summit possible. I adjust the microphone and smile, the kind of smile that comes from knowing exactly how much power costs and exactly how satisfying it feels to use it. Hi. I'm Harper. And before you think this is just another story about social media drama, let me be clear, this isn't about getting revenge on some mean girl from high school. This is about the moment I realized that being underestimated isn't always a disadvantage. Sometimes, it's the sharpest weapon you never knew you had. The notification sound hit my phone at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I should have ignored it. Should have rolled over in my hotel bed and gone back to sleep instead of reaching for my phone with that muscle memory we all have now, the automatic swipe that connects us to a world that never stops judging. But I looked. God, I always look. The TikTok had already hit 50,000 views. Camden Price, that perfectly contoured 24-year-old with her ring light setup and her generation of followers who hung on every word like she was dispensing actual wisdom instead of sponsored lip gloss reviews, was pointing her manicured finger directly at me. Well, not me specifically, a photo of me. Guys, you will not believe what happened today, she was saying, her voice pitched in that breathless, conspiratorial tone that influencers use when they want you to feel like you're their best friend. So I'm at this industry meetup in Dallas, right? And I'm talking to this, like, super important brand manager about potential collabs. The photo she'd posted was grainy, clearly taken from across a hotel lobby. Me, in my navy blazer and sensible heels, shaking hands with Marcus Chin from RevCorp. I looked professional, competent, completely ordinary. And this random woman, she looked like someone's mom, honestly, just like, inserts herself into our conversation. Camden's face filled the screen, eyes wide with performative disbelief. She hands me her business card and says she does corporate event coordination. Corporate events? In 2024? The comments were already pouring in. Laughing, crying, emojis, fire emojis that somehow felt like they were burning me instead of hyping anyone up. Not the event coordinator thinking she's important skull, ma'am, this is not 1985, probably plans office Christmas parties, LMAO, someone's dad's midlife crisis energy. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. But my chest was already tight. That familiar sensation of being small, smaller than I actually was, smaller than I'd worked to become. I stared at the ceiling of my hotel room, listening to Dallas traffic humming 20 floors below, and tried to remember the last time someone had made me feel this irrelevant. It wasn't the job thing that stung. I'd been planning corporate events for 8 years, and I was good at it. Really good. I knew how to transform sterile conference centers into spaces where million-dollar deals got made over perfectly timed coffee breaks. I knew which vendors would deliver at 5 a.m. without charging overtime, which caterers could handle last-minute dietary restrictions for 300 people, which AV techs wouldn't blink when a CEO decided 30 minutes before showtime that the entire presentation needed to be rebuilt. What stung was the dismissal, the casual cruelty of someone deciding that my work, my life, was worth exactly 15 seconds of mockery for people who would never remember my face but would definitely remember that feeling of superiority Camden had fed them. My phone buzzed again. A text from my assistant, Riley. Saw the TikTok. You okay? Want me to handle anything? Riley was 26, fluent in social media in ways I'd never be, and fiercely protective of the business we'd built together. She understood both worlds, the one where influence was measured in followers and the one where it was measured in budgets. I typed back, I'm fine. Focus on Friday prep. But I wasn't fine. I was lying in a hotel bed at 3 a.m., replaying a 30-second video that had reduced 8 years of my career to a punchline. Wondering if Marcus Chen had seen it. Wondering if my clients had seen it. Wondering if this was just how things worked now. Your worth determined by how entertaining your humiliation could be. The irony was that I'd approached Camden specifically because I thought she might be perfect for what I was planning. The Nexus Innovation Summit was shaping up to be the biggest corporate event of my career, 3 days, 500 attendees, speakers that included Fortune 500 CEOs and tech founders whose apps these influencers probably used every day. I'd been looking for fresh promotional angles, ways to reach younger professional demographics. I'd seen Camden's content before. She was smart underneath all the ring light glamour, had actually studied business before pivoting to full-time content creation. I thought she might want to expand beyond beauty sponsorships, maybe position herself as a voice in the business world. Instead, I'd become her content. My phone buzzed with another notification. The TikTok was at 127,000 views now. I scrolled through more comments, each one a tiny paper cut. Why do corporate people always think they're special? Imagine thinking event planning is a flex main character syndrome hitting hard, but then I saw something else. A comment from an account with a small blue checkmark. Wait, isn't this the woman who did the Goldman Sachs retreat last year? That was insane. And another, pretty sure she's the one who organized that Microsoft thing in Austin. My friend's company spent like $2 million on it. I felt something shift in my chest. Not vindication, exactly. Something quieter. More dangerous. I reached for my laptop and opened the folder I'd been updating all week. Sponsor confirmations, vendor contracts. The kind of paperwork that most people found boring but that told a very specific story about power and money and exactly who controlled both. Nexus Innovation Summit. Friday through Sunday. Camden would be there, I'd seen her post about attending. Tagging all the sessions she was so excited to cover for her followers. She had no idea that the woman whose pathetic little job she'd mocked to 150,000 people was the same woman whose signature was on every check that would make her weekend possible. I closed the laptop and finally turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I had work to do. Friday morning hit Dallas like a corporate fever dream. By 6 a.m., I was standing in the middle of the Omni's Grand Ballroom watching my team transform 15,000 square feet of generic hotel space into something that would make Fortune 500 executives pull out their phones and start planning their own events before breakfast was served. Harper, the Samsung display is running 30 minutes behind. Riley appeared at my elbow, tablet in hand, moving with the kind of focused energy that made her invaluable. And the keynote speaker's flight got delayed. Samsung's always 30 minutes behind. They'll be set up by 8:30, same as always, I said, watching. Three techs wrestle a 10-foot LED screen into position. And Janet Martinez is already in her room, I confirmed with her assistant 20 minutes ago. The delayed flight was her standard buffer story in case she wanted to review her slides again. Riley blinked. How did you? Because I've been doing this longer than some of these people have been working, I said, not unkindly. Janet always requests an early arrival and then pretends there were complications. Gives her control over her pre-speech nerves without looking high maintenance. This was my element. Not the glossy, performative world of ring lights and follower counts, but the invisible architecture that made everything else possible. The 1,000 tiny decisions that meant when Samsung's CEO stepped onto my stage at 9:15, the lighting would hit his face at exactly the right angle, the microphone would pick up every word without feedback, and the 300 people in the audience would forget they were sitting in a hotel ballroom and start believing they were witnessing the future. Miss Chen? A young man in a Nexus polo approached hesitantly. The catering manager needs to confirm the dietary restrictions for tonight's dinner. Send him to Riley, I said, checking my phone. 7:43 a.m. In exactly 17 minutes, the registration doors would open and 500 of the most influential people in tech and business would start flowing into my carefully orchestrated world, including Camden Price. I'd spent 3 days reviewing the attendee list, cross-referencing social media accounts, building a mental map of who would be where when. Camden had registered late, paid the individual rate instead of getting corporate sponsorship, which meant she was probably funding this herself, betting that the content she'd create here would pay for the $2,800 registration fee. She had no idea that the registration fee was just the cover charge. The real cost of this weekend was running closer to $1.2 million, spread across 17 different vendors, 12 corporate sponsors, and one woman who'd spent 8 years learning exactly how to make powerful people feel like their money was well spent. Harper. Marcus Chin materialized beside me, looking polished in that effortless way that came from having an assistant who coordinated his wardrobe. This is incredible. The setup, the energy, you've outdone yourself. Marcus was the reason I'd approached Camden in the first place. RevCorp was my biggest sponsor, and he'd specifically mentioned wanting to reach younger professional demographics for their new productivity app launch. I'd thought an influencer partnership might be exactly what he was looking for. Just wait until you see tonight, I said. The dinner presentation is going to change how people think about workplace collaboration. Speaking of which, Marcus lowered his voice slightly. I've been getting some interesting DMs. Someone posted about meeting you earlier this week. Something about event planning? My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Social media has a way of making everything sound more dramatic than it is. Right. Well, whoever she is, she's been tagging RevCorp in her stories about attending today. Might be good cross-promotion if you want to connect her with our marketing team. The doors opened at exactly 8 a.m., and the first wave of attendees began streaming into the registration area. I watched from the mezzanine level as my team guided people through check-in with the kind of seamless efficiency that looked effortless but required months of planning. At 8:23, I spotted her. Camden Price walked through the main entrance wearing a cream-colored blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her phone already out, already filming. Even from 2 floors up, I could see her performing, the wide-eyed wonder of someone discovering a world she wanted her followers to think she belonged in. Good morning, Nexus, fam. I could hear her voice carrying across the marble atrium. I am so excited to be here today. The energy is incredible, and I cannot wait to share this journey with you guys. She moved through the registration line like she was walking a red carpet, making conversation with other attendees, positioning herself in what she probably thought were casual selfies but were clearly calculated to capture the most impressive backdrops. I watched her approach the information desk where Riley was stationed, watched her lean in with that conspiratorial intimacy she used when she wanted something. Hey, Camden said, her voice carrying that perfectly pitched friendliness. I'm Camden Price. I'm creating content about the summit this weekend. Is there any way I could get some behind-the-scenes access? Maybe meet whoever organized this amazing event? Riley's eyes found mine across the room. I gave her the slightest nod. Actually, Riley said, her voice warm and professional, the event coordinator is here today. She's been really hands-on with everything. I think she's upstairs in the green room if you want me to introduce you. That would be amazing. Camden's phone was still recording. I love supporting other women in business, especially the ones doing the real work behind the scenes. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. Something more precise. I made my way down to the main level, moving through the crowd with the kind of purposeful invisibility that came from knowing exactly where every camera angle was, exactly which conversations mattered, exactly how to position yourself to hear everything while appearing to focus on nothing. Camden was still at the information desk, still filming, when I approached from behind. Excuse me, I said, my voice carrying just enough authority to make her turn around. I heard you were looking for the event coordinator. She turned, phone still raised, and for just a moment, maybe 2 seconds, her face was completely blank. Then recognition hit, and I watched her expression cycle through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been panic before settling on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, she said, and for the first time since I'd started watching her content, Camden Price seemed genuinely speechless. Harper Chen, I said, extending my hand with the same professional warmth I'd used on Tuesday night. We've met before. Camden's phone was still recording, and I could see her mind racing behind those perfectly lined eyes. Her followers were watching in real time as their queen of quick comebacks struggled to find words. Yes, she managed, finally lowering her phone. Harper. Right. I remember. I'm sure you do. I smiled, the kind of smile I used with vendors who tried to upcharge me last minute. Pleasant. Unmovable. I believe you described my work as corporate event coordination in 2024? The color drained from her face, but she recovered with that influencer reflex, the ability to spin anything into content. Oh my God, you saw that? It was such a funny coincidence running into you, and I was recording content about how unimportant my job was, I finished quietly. For your 3 million followers, people were starting to notice. Not obviously, this crowd was too polished for outright staring, but I could feel the subtle shift in attention that happened when something interesting was brewing in a room full of people who made their living reading social dynamics. Listen, Camden said, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a confidential whisper. I think there might have been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I said. You took a photo of me without permission, posted it online, and invited your followers to mock my career. That's not a misunderstanding. That's just what happened. Riley appeared at my shoulder, tablet in hand. Harper, they need you in the main ballroom. The opening keynote starts in 20 minutes. Perfect timing. Riley had always been good at reading a room. I said, turning back to her with genuine curiosity, what exactly do you think happens at a corporate event? I'm interested in your perspective. She glanced around, clearly aware that people were listening now. I mean, obviously you coordinate meetings and this weekend, you're going to watch Samsung unveil their new enterprise platform to an audience that collectively controls about $40 billion in purchasing power, I said conversationally. Tonight, you'll eat dinner that was planned down to the molecular gastronomy, at tables positioned according to influence mapping that took 3 weeks to perfect, listening to speakers who typically charge 6 figures just to show up. I paused, watching her face. The corporate event coordination you laughed about? That's me making sure that when those people shake hands tomorrow morning, entire industries shift. But please, tell me more about how unimportant this work is. Camden's phone was still in her hand, but the recording light was off now. You weren't trying to what? Be cruel? Be dismissive? Make money by making me look small? I kept my voice level, professional. Because you succeeded at all 3. The ballroom doors opened behind us, and the soft chime that signaled the opening session echoed through the atrium. Around us, attendees began moving toward the main event space with the kind of purposeful energy that said money was about to be made. I should go, Camden said quickly. I have content to create, and actually, I said, checking my phone, you should probably stay for the opening remarks. I think you'll find them educational. She looked confused, but followed the crowd into the ballroom. I watched her find a seat in the middle section, close enough to get good footage, far enough back to avoid attention from the real power players in the front rows. I made my way backstage, where Janet Martinez was doing her final microphone check. The Samsung executives were clustered near the wings, radiating that specific tension that came from knowing you were about to announce something that would change your company's trajectory. 5 minutes, everyone, I called out, and felt the familiar surge of energy that came from orchestrating something this complex. 57. People working in perfect synchronization to create 90 minutes of seamless presentation. At exactly 9:15, the lights dimmed and Janet Martinez walked onto the stage I'd designed to make her look like the future of business leadership. Good morning, and welcome to the Nexus Innovation Summit, she said, her voice carrying perfectly to every corner of the ballroom. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the extraordinary woman who made this weekend possible. I felt my heart stop. When we started planning this summit 18 months ago, we knew we needed someone who understood that the most important innovations happen not just in boardrooms, but in the connections between them. Someone who could create the kind of experience that transforms how industry leaders think about collaboration, technology, and the future of work. The lights shifted, and my name appeared in gold letters on the massive screen behind her. Harper Chen, our summit architect and the visionary behind every detail of your experience this weekend. The applause was immediate and genuine, the kind of recognition that came from 500 people who understood exactly how much skill it took to make their weekend feel effortless. I spotted Camden in the crowd, her face frozen in something between shock and calculation. Her phone was out again, but she wasn't recording. She was just staring at the screen where my name glowed like a declaration. After the opening ceremony, I found her in the networking lounge, sitting alone with a coffee she wasn't drinking. Congratulations, she said when I approached. I had no idea. Most people don't, I said, sitting down across from her. That's actually the point. Good event coordination is invisible until it's not. She was quiet for a long moment. I owe you an apology. You owe me nothing, I said. But you might want to think about the stories you tell about people you don't know. Especially when those stories are designed to make your audience feel superior to strangers. Camden nodded slowly. The TikTok, I should delete it. Don't, I said, surprising both of us. Leave it up. Let people see what assumptions look like. I stood to leave, then turned back. Your content about this weekend, if you decide to make any, try telling a different story. About learning something. About being wrong. About what happens when you realize the person you dismissed is the person who made your weekend possible. I left her sitting there and spent the rest of the day doing what I do best, making sure that 500 influential people had the experience of their lives, never knowing how much work it took to make it look easy. By Sunday evening, Camden had posted a new video. No ring light this time, just her face and some very different words about assumptions, humility, and the women who build the world while other people perform in it. It got 12 million views. But the best part was that I didn't need the apology. Didn't need the viral redemption. Didn't need her to make me feel valuable. I'd remembered, in the space between Tuesday night and Sunday evening, that I already was.